And we are live. Greetings, salutations, and welcome to another World Anvil podcast live. I have a very special guest here, and why not? This is the amazing RC Helix, and he is here to talk to us about all things anime, which is excellent because I am an anime noob. RC, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Janet, thank you for having me. And can I compliment you on your amazing music building up to all this? Because I was sitting down feeling like I was, part of my own like epic. It was really awesome. I was like, oh, this is going to be a great interview with that music. So good choice. Good choice. Very dramatic. I like it.
For those of you in the future wondering what we are talking about, we of course have our album Embers of Inspiration, which you can find everywhere, and our starter music for our live streams is using that. One of the tracks is called Epic Motivation,
which I love it.
Sometimes you need it when you're sitting down to world build. You need some epic motivation. So we have our like pump track. So that is the music we're talking about. I realize it doesn't appear on the podcast for those of you in the future and on the YouTube cut. But yeah, there's some epic music to be had if you come join us on our lives. And speaking of epic, let me introduce RC properly because I'm sure they're far too modest to introduce themselves. RC Helix, real name Chris Moujaes, is the creator of the Flux Destiny universe, the writer and artist behind the Flux Destiny manga series, and the creator of the Flux Destiny TTRPG. More on all of that later. As a producer, writer, and artist, he boasts over 2 decades of experience in the entertainment industry, including film, animation, and publishing. He served as the executive producer on anime films based on the hit BioWare and Electronic Arts game franchises, including, this is really freaking awesome, guys, Mass Effect Paragon Lost and Dragon Age Dawn of the Seeker. And now he's bringing all of that industry experience to Flux Destiny, which is his baby / brainchild / project of many years and passions, right, Chris?
That's right, absolutely. It's a long time coming, that's for sure.
We were just talking about how even when you were working back at Funimation, you were already building a world and thinking about the RPG of Flux Destiny. Can you give us just like the elevator pitch, a soupçon, a little taster
of Flux Destiny or of
Flux
my
Destiny.
Career? Okay. So Flux Destiny is a science fantasy manga set in an alternate 1990s world where karma is real and the universe enforces payback. And so the magic system runs on karma, but you can do all sorts of things. There's the universe. It sees the universe as everything being built on what's called the Great Machine, which is everything's connected. And you can make changes to cause and effect, but that to achieve kind of superhuman feats, but you always risk causing payback, which is the universe's immune system for trying to mess with the natural order of things. So that's the big picture.
Okay, the world sounds amazing, and I know that Secondhand Samurai has been sharing in the chat that you can learn more at fluxdestiny.com/start is a very good place to, of course, get started. So if you are curious, you can go and check that out. But we, of course, are here to talk about, on the grander scheme of things, anime, world building, and anime in general, and all of those things. So why don't we start with anime? What's the big deal, right? Anime has just continued to gain traction, continued to become more and more mainstream. What do you think is the big appeal? What's drawing everyone in your opinion?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me here with you because we just had such a great conversation even before. So this is really great. Anime is the reason anime is so appealing. It hits a number of things. One is that it's a bridge. If we look at it, I'm going to kind of build one thing on top of the other. Looking at it from strictly a human developmental standpoint, we all grow up, many people grow up enjoying animation. But then there's a point where you start growing up and animation stops, especially Western animation with certain types of storytelling that it's like, okay, this is kid stuff, right? And it's like, it's no longer appealing. And anime bridges that, right? Where there's so much available in anime that is more mature topics, more complex storytelling, more complex characters. So all those together provide a bridge into where you can still imagine and have a great time with the animation medium, but it's something that respects your intelligence. I mean, you and I were talking just about some of the old, some of these other, I think that's why, for example, Avatar is so popular, is that it respects the audience's intelligence. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I have not seen a lot of anime, but something like Ergo Proxy is really deep and philosophical and, you know, sometimes quite hard to follow, but in a very cerebral way, not in a sort of bizarrest way. Like there's a lot of food for thought out there.
It's interesting because so I spent many years producing anime, and in the process of it, learning the difference between Western style animation and storytelling and Japanese style. In Japan, when you put together an anime, you usually have what they refer to as a creator, which is usually the director of the show. They really imprint upon it their vision, right? It's very different than here, where it's more mechanical on the Western side of animation storytelling, where it's like, okay, designed by committee, you know, make sure it, you know, reaches certain, you know, hits certain marks and what. No, it's like that creator has it's the auteur kind of approach, right? Where they have a vision and it's stamped on it and you see the result. That's another reason why people love anime, is because now not all of it. There's obviously sucky anime too, right? But when it works because the directors and the creators, they have a vision for the way they want to bring it forward. Also, a lot of times it's based on manga that is already been proven in the marketplace. And so their ability to take that and make it into, into animation and do it with with a great vision is really spectacular. I mean, look at Attack on Titan, you know, for example, is a great one. So,
great comment from our audience. Drunken Panda says, adult animation done right can be even better than live action. I don't think live action Castlevania would work at all, but the Netflix show was great. Animation can age, but it ages very differently than CGI. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's so true. That is absolutely true. And I think it's definitely a false statement to say that adults don't, that cartoons, when we call things cartoons, we're specifically talking about Western animation for kids. That's what it is. But animation as a genre for adults is fantastic because you've seen it with even failed live action adaptations, when people try to take things and they try to make something animated into live action. There is something that's lost, and very few times has it actually worked, because there's a magic. You know what it is? You know what it is, Janet? It's this. I was thinking the other day, you know how when they make a book adaptation, a movie adaptation of a book, and everyone leaves with these different expectations, like, oh, some people like it, some don't. There's always this disappointment that happens when a book is turned into a movie. The reason that happens, and this is just me, this is my deduction on why that is that the beauty of reading a book, for example, is that your own imagination creates the world based on what you're reading.
Yes.
Right. And then when you've seen it put on screen, then all those decisions that you've made as the reader have now been co-opted by a director who's made their own artistic choices that don't match yours.
Yeah.
And animation kind of does that too. And what I mean by that is that because it's not real, it's not photorealistic, it's drawings, there's still this little gap between realism and fantasy. And you miss that kind of uncanny valley of like, well, this is real, and okay, I think that's what happens with live action stuff. So
yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. And absolutely there is an adage in there's an adage in writing. Obviously, I come from the writing world, that in writing, your special effects budget is unlimited. And when you're writing short stories, special effects budget is unlimited. You can do whatever the hell you like. And I think a lot of that also carries over into anime. It can be bigger. We talk about, science fiction and fantasy being the grand metaphor, and you can get very grand and very metaphorical in anime because there's just, if you can draw it, it can exist,
Well, I just saw in the comments talking about the intros on Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
That's kind of a lost art too, in my opinion, that anime does very well, is that it takes its intros very seriously.
Yeah.
Attack on Titan, which is one I definitely recommend you watch. I'm going to get you up to speed on anime, Janet. I'm going to get you up. I am going to get you up to speed.
Consider this podcast, folks, a crash course in anime as well as a crash course in anime world building. We're doing this.
There are so many great intros, and they're great because they set the mood and they get you excited and ready to get into the story. So yeah, I will get you there.
Okay. Well, actually, that segues us beautifully into our next question. Obviously, anime is a whole medium. It's like saying, opera or short stories. There's a lot in the box. Can you give us a little walkthrough of kind of the anime landscape for beginners, as it were?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so big because you can have anything. You have action, adventure, fantasy, isekai, which is a genre of being transported to other worlds. It's very popular, especially with RPG stuff. Romance, slice of life, horror, military. I mean, there's all sorts of, drama. You could take your pick. It goes across the whole spectrum of genres within it. And you can go from, for example, we were talking about Attack on Titan, which is very epic and very big and very high stakes, to then going to something that's more like lower. Like if you were to take the spectrum, one of the ones that we talk about a lot internally is the sports anime, which I love sports anime too. Haikyuu is one of my favorite. I'm sure there has to be some Haikyuu fans here, which is a volleyball anime that is just amazing, and mainly because it's so inspirational. It's such an inspirational show to watch, but the characters are great, and then you can go from that to stuff that mixes it. There's a great show called Hyoka, which is a slice of life meets like school mystery thing, where there's a little bit of stakes, but it's not like you're not going to have a heart attack going to bed watching something like this. I absolutely love Hyoka. It's one of my favorites. I'm going to recommend you watch it. It's beautifully animated. The storytelling is great. So there's pretty much anything you want, you can find in the space. Now, there is a glut of anime. There's so much of it that sometimes it's hard to, say. So you should never walk away with anime is fantastic, therefore all anime is good. No, it's not. There's a lot of bad, a gradient of anime quality out there in terms of storytelling or whatever. But when it hits, it hits.
Yeah. Okay, let's move then to the sort of the science fiction fantasy space, the world building space especially. What are some really good examples of where anime really gets the world building, where it really does it right?
Well, Full Metal Alchemist is an amazing one. Have you seen it? Is that one you've seen?
Yes, that's one of the few that I have in fact seen. Okay. It's one of my examples of go-to examples of a hard magic system that isn't fussy.
Absolutely. It really gives you that space that you can, I mean, as the series went on, and I've read the manga, or the whole manga, I've watched both series. I've read everything on it. When you read it and you see, this is a new thing you can do with alchemy that I didn't know before, but didn't feel retconned. It felt like naturally.
It's an extension of the logic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's an extension of the rules of the world. Yeah.
And it's also what's a great thing about Full Metal Alchemist is that there's a philosophy built into Full Metal Alchemist about equivalent exchange that is not only a practical part of the magic system, but also in the theming of the story. So that having those two things together is what makes it really, really powerful and well done. So those are my favorite. When you can take an anime like that can really take the source material, because if you read the manga source material and then see it executed in an anime, they get all the nuance, and that's when it's done right. Again, I don't mean to keep going back to Attack on Titan, but it's a very famous one that a lot of people know, but also takes that into account too.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it sounds to me like great world building in anime is great world building in general. Or do you think that there are certain things that are very sort of specific to anime worlds? Is there something that sort of makes it feel like an anime world as opposed to a world that you might find in a book or in an RPG or in a video game?
I'm going to start the answer to that question by saying first that I don't want this ever to sound like I am dumping on Western style either. I want to make it clear that like everything has its own. I think there's a reason that anime right now has been blowing up. I mean, we've seen like Demon Slayer, for example, which is another really, Demon Slayer is relatively simple compared to the other worlds we're talking about, but it's just beautifully done, beautifully animated series. But why these work and what how do I put that? Let me see how to put that. It's because this bridges back to what I said at the very beginning of the conversation about a commitment to a vision, right? Is that this is not designed by committee, so to speak, is that there's a vision and that they will take certain risks, creative risks, and sometimes even with the anime material, the manga material itself, the source material, sometimes they'll take some risks on it too and take their own take on it. That can be popular or not. But it really comes down to that vision and making a decision and going with it. And I think that's why when you see what's happening with anime versus like a lot of stuff that's been coming out of Hollywood, it's like you want to tear your face off, because it's just like, this is like, what am I watching? Like, this is like, no one's committing, no one's taking creative risks anymore. And now, having been a studio executive for many years, look, I get the risk side because that was part of my job for a long time, was deciding especially when I was producing live action movies, was deciding, okay, how big of a risk is this? And then mitigating it through casting and things like that. But now the problem is, the issue that has come up is that the internet has become this great democratizing feature for all of us. Is that it used to be that if you wanted to create a story or write a book or make a movie, you had to go through a studio or a major publisher, whatever. Now, obviously, all those gatekeepers are down and you can get your content out, in any way you want. That's a good thing, but it's also the challenge because that means everyone can get their stuff out, right? So now you have to fight against this wave of content. And that means you really have to stand out when you do it because you're not fighting the studios anymore. You're fighting your peers, right? To get attention. And it's good. And I see that as a good thing. And the reason why I see it as good is that there's always good in creative competition because it forces you to come up with better stuff, like outshine. You've seen stuff on YouTube or in web comics, or I've seen stuff that I was like, this is an independent producer who's created this show. It's blown up and Hollywood can't do anything like it. They can't,
A great example of that was Hell of a Boss.
Absolutely. The Digital Circus. Amazing Digital Circus was another one. Yeah,
absolutely. Where essentially I think the first episode came out on YouTube and then Prime was like, we want this, don't make any more. We want it. And Prime just bought the whole thing.
It's crazy.
Has Been Hotel. Sorry, that's what it was called.
Has Been Hotel is what you're thinking. Yeah. So it's there. You just have to be ready for the, this is where whenever we actually have within our community, we do manga art lessons. So we teach people too within our community. Right. And we don't call them students, we call them rivals. Nice. And we've kind of themed it all around like tournament arcs and like shonen anime. And the reason we do that is that it's healthy. Having a rival is healthy because it means that it's like someone you respect and you want to outdo. You want to either become or outdo, right? And so looking at your peers as rivals is a healthy way to do it because it inspires you to be like, I'm going to beat you, but not like in a malicious way, but it's like, it's going to force me to get better than you. I admire you and I want to take that and I want to be better than you. And then you become someone else's rival as part of the process. So that I think is when you look at something like anime and see the creators one-upping themselves and the studios one-upping themselves. Going back to Demon Slayer, UFO Table, who does the animation for that, is gorgeous animation, right? There's no AI. It's all completely hand-drawn. It's just beautifully done. And I think that's what people admire. People admire craftsmanship. because everything now is so disposable and at push button. You can push a button and you can come up with. I actually find like old school memes funnier than stuff that people try to create with like AI slop, because it took effort to create, even if it doesn't look,
even if it was a bit
polished.
janky.
Yeah,
that was part of the charm. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think it sounds like what you're describing, particularly with the sort of the idea of this sort of very artist vision. It's almost the idea of, highly processed food versus, farm grown food. What you're getting is it's more nourishing somehow. It doesn't feel like it's been, extruded and flavored and processed and made to tick a lot of boxes by a big group of people in a studio. It feels like someone had a vision and a dream, and they got a bunch of people together and they made that happen. So really what I'm hearing is what makes a world feel like an anime world, a really good anime world, is that it's very intense in its vision. Would you say that's the case?
I would say that's the case. And I'd also say that kind of what you and I were talking about before the show started was about deliberate storytelling, deliberate world, creation. I was talking about your platform, you and I, right before the show, and I was saying what I love about that is that I am not a fan of like seat of your pants kind of development. I like to have everything be connected and deliberate in terms of the world building, the history, the magic system, the people, everything about it being integrated, so that when you make a decision here, it impacts here. Like in our universe, for example, in Flux Destiny, it is completely impossible to bring people back from the dead. Like there is no way to do that. And it's a deliberate decision, because I want decisions. When you make it, a character makes a decision, it means something, right? You can't take it back. You can't do that. So you're going to do it. You better commit to it. So what makes a world feel like an anime world like this is that when you have you have a vision, you stick to it, and you do as best as you can to make every decision deliberately made from, there's this saying, I always butcher this. I need to go look up what the saying is. I butcher it, but I think you'll get what I'm trying to say. There's a connection between the words authority, author, and authenticity, right? These words connect. And what gives you as the author the authority to speak about your world, and what makes it authentic and gives it authenticity, is that you've paid attention to those details, right? That's where you draw your authority from, and therefore creates the authenticity of the world you've created, is because you actually care about putting those pieces together and making them their work. It's not hand wave, and for me, retcon is a 4-letter word in my universe, and it's like something you can't always avoid it, but if you can do your best, to build deliberately, the results are so much better, because people who are enjoying your story or taking part in your story are inspired. First of all, it gets them to think, because they're like, oh wow, I saw this happen in this chapter, and oh, I see how it's connected here. People don't want pastimes. They don't want to waste their time. People love to be inspired, right? And that inspiration can come in different ways. Seeing a story subconsciously, a really well done story, is something that, even if you're not a storyteller, inspires you from a number of different ways. From the themes that the story may be talking about, living vicariously through the characters, or also seeing that a story, that this was possible. Like you mentioned it earlier. Someone had a vision, they stuck to it, and then they made it. And this came out of nothing, right? And I think that's a layer. You get a layer of inspiration from that, and people they look for meaning. Human beings need meaning, and they're searching through this wasteland of slop that you and I were talking about earlier, and they're not going to get that satisfaction when it's all fast food junk that you very well packaged it as. So
I think this is actually a great segue. We've been talking about vision. We've been talking about how that can really, lead to great results. Where do you start world building for anime specifically? Like, do you think it's different than from other media?
It's not. I don't see it different. I think regardless of what media format you choose, it's always going to be the same. You know, you can attack it, as you know, you're an expert in this as well. It's like you can attack it from many different ways, but it's like one of the most important places, obviously, is like timeline management, right? It's like you don't want to have logical loopholes if you can avoid them. You know, plot holes in the way, or things happening when they shouldn't, like having a coherent timeline in the way things work. Deciding what kind of magic system, if there is a magic system in your world, deciding, is it soft, hard, where does it fit? And not shying away from, and setting up certain rules. And people, you hear this, I'm sure you've heard this a lot too as a writer. People, oh, I don't like to be contained. I don't like to be restrained by rules. You try to talk about the 3-act structure and they're like, oh no, I don't want to be constrained by rule. No, I'm very passionate about this because it's like, it's the format, it's the rules and learning to work with them and sometimes break them, that what makes you creative. You know, there are cars have 4 wheels and a steering wheel, and they look, you know, you can see all different types of cars and vehicles, right? It's not the format that is the problem. It's how you work with that format to create a story, right? And so anime, I'm kind of tangenting, I'm sorry, because I get very passionate about that part. But in terms of like world building for anime, it doesn't matter, you know, what the ultimate format is. It's the deliberateness of the decisions you're making. I think that's at the end of the day, you are a decider when you're building a world. You have to like, you have all these decisions you have to make. You have all these cool ideas. And this is a problem I suffered with for a long time. It's like, oh, I want to just shove all this in. But you got to make a decision. You know how it is. It's like you're writing a story. You're like, I got to make a decision, you know? So
yeah, absolutely. There's a reason that World Anvil has a whole meta section where we encourage people to figure out the rules of their world and figure out how things work and what really, like, what are the vibes here? What kind of fun are we having? And you know, let's be specific and get excited about the specificity, you know.
So I'm so glad you said that, because in Flux Fantasy, our TTRPG, well, in the universe, the magic system is called karmistry, and that's how you use karma to affect the way the world works, and you have to avoid causing payback, which is the universe's immune system, right? And the people who use it, the main people who can use it, are called escape artists, for their ability to escape the payback that karma can bring on you. So there's it's a theme system. But in the TTRPG, there's actually a whole section of the core rulebook that lists all the rules. Like there's like a literal, like, here's all the code of conduct for karmistry. And it goes through all this. And if the purpose that the reason why that exists is not because I wanted to create this is how you have to do it. This is how, no, the point is I want you to, it's supposed to create material for your characters to have conflict, to break those rules, right? You set the rules and everything should happen in opposition to those rules. That's what makes great storytelling, right? Is the conflict. It's like, oh, if you can't, you know, if, for example, one of the rules is you cannot use karmistry in the country that the main story takes place is called Fortuna. In Fortuna, there's a form of karmistry called cosplay karmistry, where you can physically change your appearance.
Oh, cool.
So the problem is, well, in Fortuna, that's illegal. You can't do that unless you have certain permission, because obviously it would be problematic if people are impersonating each other and whatever. Well, there are people who are making, you know, whole careers on illicit careers on cosplay karmistry in that universe. It's like, how do you get by in the story without getting caught by the authorities, you know, for doing that? So, so I really am very passionate about that, because it's like, I think that's another reason why anime is also very popular, is that it's not afraid to create conflicts or make very distinct story decisions. You being a fan of Full Metal Alchemist know that there were some decisions made with certain characters who met certain fates that are very like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that to that character, you know? So, you know, so I'm just passionate about that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so sorry. It appears that Twitch has just fallen over.
Oh.
So I'm just letting folks on Twitch know that they can come join us on YouTube, which
Oh,
still
okay.
appears to be up. Beg your pardon, guys. These are the exciting try-fail cycles that you get when you try and do live streams.
Janet, it's probably me because there's an ongoing joke in our community. We live stream so often that there's always something that happens. We get on live and the countdown will stop working or whatever. So I don't know if I brought that to you, but you can blame it on me.
There is a theory on Twitch that we were giving out too much good advice and the man shut it down. Little do they know, you can't stop the signal. That's true. Absolutely. Sorry about that. Small segue. So, I think this is a good place to go next. We talked about the start and how the start is not different. How the start, good world building is good world building. But there are things that are very specific to anime. And one of those, of course, is the art style, the visuals, the fact that this is a visual storytelling medium in the way that, RPGs are not really, and novels and short stories are not at all. How does that affect the world building? And at what point in the process do you sort of slot art into it, as it were?
Well, I can talk about it from two perspectives. One, from my perspective of having produced anime based on other IPs, and then producing my own universe is two different decision processes.
Sure.
When I was head of original anime at Funimation/Crunchyroll, we used to the decision process was, okay, we were going to make this anime, like let's say we were talking about the Mass Effect anime. Like, well, what style? The universe is already set. How do we pick a style in anime that is that either complements it, that's complementary to the way the universe is set, or challenges it, and gets people to, wake up. I'm a person who grew up with the old Super Mario Brothers movie from like the 90s. So, I remember being completely like the Super Mario Brothers movie that came out a couple of years ago is what I wanted as a kid, right? That didn't exist. So, like, they went way off the deep end, creating something that was like very avant-garde, and like now it's fun to watch just for the sheer insanity of it, at least for me. But the making a choice that does not take people out of the illusion is important, right? From that perspective, because I talk about this a lot. The suspension of disbelief, maintaining the suspension of disbelief is so important. Yes. And picking the art style, if it becomes a hindrance to the experience, then you've lost kind of the story. You've lost the illusion. It's kind of like, oh, they break out of the trance of watching of being in the experience. It's the same with when we were talking about world building in general. If you have plot holes or problems in your magic system or in your timeline, or things just logically cannot work, that's another way that you can create a suspension of disbelief, right? You can disrupt the suspension of disbelief and you ruin the illusion. So for me as a creator, whether as a creator or as an executive who made decisions to put teams together to produce movies, was how do I keep the audience within the suspension of disbelief? Sure. And that's where the art form is really important. So when you're putting an anime together, you got to pick, okay, who's the right creator for this? Not only visually, like in terms of the visual style, but their art directing style, their the way they set up the cinematography in the series is really important as well. Is it complementary to what's happening and telling the story? From the other perspective, as a creator, that's very different because I have my own style, right? So I draw the manga and all the art that supports the TTRPG and things like that based on a style that kind of fits my aesthetic that I've built over all these years. So I can't really control. I'm not. I wish I was one of those artists who could like chameleon and change my style like crazy, but it's just kind of the best I can do with the talent I have. So
yeah, I mean, you have to work with what you have, and I guess that's also part of it. If you're an individual, if you're listening to us and thinking, I want to create my own manga or I want to create my own anime, what can I do is a valid question as well. Like bringing that into part of the sort of creation equation, the setup equation, like what is appropriate for me to approach, I suppose.
Well, and at the same time, this bridges into the kind of content. It's like, okay, even the decisions of language, like how far can you go with like swearing in your story, is another thing too, because it starts creating a funnel effect where your audience will slim and slim and slim based on how many decisions you make. And just like you and I said, I don't remember if this was before we got on live or during the live, but if you try to be something for everyone, you also end up creating this kind of blob that doesn't appeal to anyone. So it's very difficult difficult's not the right word. It is a skill in and of itself to understand pick an audience, and then to create the guardrails around it so that you can give them the experience without talking down to them and still giving them a good show,
I love that. I think that's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about common misconceptions, because I think, from the outside, a lot of people look at anime and they have certain opinions about it. What do you think are the common misconceptions about anime world building? Where do you think people get kind of stuck on that?
I think people confuse, and I'm someone who's also fallen to this too. So this is not me throwing stones at glass houses or whatever the saying is. Like, people confuse complexity for quality. I don't know what the word, the equation.
Complexity for sophistication.
For sophistication, right? Exactly. It's like you don't have to have a complex setting to and a complex, deep story. Magic system for something to be sophisticated and enjoyable. And when you take what anime sometimes does for audiences who are watching it, is that they're kind of hit on multiple fronts, especially when it's really good. They will see, wow, this amazing complex art style, right? That's just really amazing. And then the animation is beautiful. And then the storytelling and the world. So you see all this, but if you sit down and look at it, it's not necessarily a through line all the way through where the whole thing is complex. You've taken all these simple pieces and put them together that's created a complex experience for you.
Yeah.
Right? As part of it. But it doesn't mean that for it to be something you enjoy, it has to be inherently complex. You could argue, you could look at anything. Look at Lord of the Rings, for example. If you look at Lord of the Rings, the story, the world of Lord of the Rings and the lore of Lord of the Rings is very deep and very layered and beautifully done. But the story itself is simple, right? The story of what's happening is simple. So starting with that kind of backbone is that you don't need to start in with a assumption that I want to create something complex.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about Fullmetal Alchemist earlier. It's really, despite all the political complexity, the philosophies and ethics and everything that's happening in it, these two kids lost their mom. They lost body parts in the process, and they're trying to get back to normal. That's the story.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can get to that, that's actually the hard part. The hard part is, what is the story you're trying to tell, and building on top, layering it on top. But then you have to be careful that it doesn't overwhelm the story and then collapse in on itself. And that's why for me, it took many, many years to develop Flux Destiny to the point where I was ready to launch it, was that I would run into that, where I would run into these situations where I would just keep layering stuff on top, and it became so complicated that I was falling for that same trap, right? I was like, oh, people will like this because it's complex. I was like, no, you're just creating more work for yourself, and you can't even keep everything straight. So I think that's the same thing about what people, when they're looking at anime world building, a misconception that they walk away with is that.
Yeah. There's a comment here that this is also hitting the video game industry right now, where people are sort of mistaking complexity for sophistication. And I think in both anime and video games, there's something that's very important there, which is they are already a complex system, because there are already a lot more moving parts than there would be in a novel, because you have the music and you have the graphics and you have the way the story is told. There's a lot more going on, basically. So the more complexity you add to each element, the more likely you are to end up with systems collapse, which is what happens with complex systems.
It's true. I whether or not there's this is probably a terrible example, so you have to pardon me for this example, but I think it's kind of fitting. There's an episode of Kitchen Nightmares, Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, from like, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago. And he's at this restaurant and he is, it's the typical story. He's going into a restaurant that's failing. And the idea, he was really excited to get this particular dish. He's like, I can't wait to get filet mignon. He goes, It's simple, it's classic. When it's done right, you really enjoy it, right? And he gets the filet mignon and it's like a disaster, right? Like it's like, he's like, how do you mess this up? This is, so the point being, what I'm trying to draw from that is that it's not that you need, because what happened was the chef who had prepared the filet mignon started dumping all this stuff on top of it. Like he literally had this device that he took a roof tile, like a Spanish roof tile, and he started pouring butter, like melted butter, like lava. It was, and Gordon Ramsay's like, and he just smothered it in this, right? He just smothered it in the butter, and it just like ruined it. That's the trap that all of us can fall into, right? Because we inherently want to create really well thought out worlds and that have these layers, but really there is when we go back to the decision making, what's the root of the word decide? Was to cut off, right? It's to make a decision and cut off from all other options. So anyway, I just pardon my kitchen nightmares example, but I think it works really well in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just gilding the lily, as we would say in English.
Absolutely.
Just too many things. I think this is a great place to go next. We've talked about how complexity can be a problem. Tropes are a really good shortcut for complexity. How do you think they can serve anime, and what are your favorites?
So anime is very popular for a number of tropes that, and I think the word, by the way, trope gets a bad rap because people say, oh, that's tropey, it's trope. But the truth is, it's just like what I talked about earlier. It's like when a car has four wheels and a steering wheel, and yet you can create all sorts of beautiful cars, depending on it, right? So that's the same with the word trope. I think these are things like rivals, underdogs, training arcs, comic relief. You have all these tropes that work in it, but what is it that you do with it? What is it you do with that trope that makes it unique to your story? What's great about, look at something like My Hero Academia. Have you seen My Hero Academia?
That one I haven't seen, no.
You haven't seen, okay. So something like My Hero Academia has all sorts of tropes in it. You've got the underdog, you've got the rivals, you've got the mentors, but it's what they do with it. I will be the first to admit, the first time that I actually like cried at an anime that was like inspirational was like, I think the first episode of My Hero when All Might tells Deku, you can be a hero too. I think that's how the episode ends. And it was really like this powerful moment, but you took this, this underdog and his mentor, and being told that, yes, your dream is possible, was such a powerful moment in that story, for them. And so it's just taking those things and working with it and finding ways to put your own unique spins on those tropes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we talk a lot about tropes here on the podcast. Tropes are incredibly powerful tools. They are very good shortcuts. Often they are sort of paradigms, and there's a lot that you can do with them. They're tools, just like everything else. The way you use them defines their success, and where and in what way. So yes, no, absolutely agree with you. Tropes, very, very useful pieces of meta storytelling juice, essentially.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the complexity. Sometimes, and all of us, regardless if you're a writer, a filmmaker, a manga artist, whatever your form of a musician, whatever your form of creativity is, everyone is always seeking, what is my unique? How do I make this so unique? Mm-hmm. Right? And the problem is that's a trap, as you know, right? Is that how do I make something unique? And what you end up doing is creating a bunch of you create this like feedback loop that it's it's like what's the saying there's nothing new under the sun. It's like what you take and how you then work with it to create a new take on it, or take those pieces and create something unique by the blend of those tropes, those whatever those elements may be. That's what ends up becoming the unique part of it. I talk about this too, even with our art rivals and in the art classes that we do, is that everyone gets caught up with coming up with their own unique style. I need to come up with my style. What your style, in very rare instances, does an art style just come out. Everyone starts off the same. They get inspiration from different things, and then you blend those together into your own unique style as a natural process. It's not, this is my style today. It just doesn't happen that way. It's just, and actually, if you go into it with this, if you go into whether it's art style or whether it's uniqueness in terms of your storytelling, whether it's uniqueness in terms of your TTRPG, whatever it is that you're trying to create this bar of, it has to be unique. It doesn't come from a vacuum. Yeah. It comes from all these things that have come together to inspire you to create that, and you blend them and put them into your own, into your own form, and that's what makes it unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will also say that uniqueness is not always a good thing, honestly, because what audiences tend to be looking for is something that they can connect to, and something that it feels familiar but fresh, the same but different. For folks listening, there is a very, very fine book called The Cole Book Guide to Game Design, in which Wolfgang Bauer talks a lot about, choosing what you're actually going to design, and his personal process of going through design. Wolfgang Bauer, of course, one of the sort of legends and first hands of the Dungeons and Dragons industry. And he talks a lot about, creating something that is the same but different, so people can understand what it is they're getting into. So you can't set expectations when everything is new, when everything is so incredibly unique and bizarre. People can't actually connect with it. And also, show me what that looks like, because it's very hard to imagine, right? Okay. But like, audiences like things that are familiar. Audiences appreciate having something to hang on to. So creating, it's the reason that, it's Sherlock Holmes, but on a space station, or, yes, the concept bash is so popular because people take two things, and the freshness is the rendering. The freshness is how you bring it to life. So yeah, originality is wonderful, but something that is completely unique, I don't think it exists. And if it did, I don't think people would connect with it.
They wouldn't connect. I'm so glad that you said that, because it is. And let me say first, let's have a cat appreciation moment.
I'm so sorry. I did not realize she was in.
No, I actually put mine up because he will show up. He hears me talking and he will do the same thing. So I better lock up my cat. His name is Sheldon, and he's a wonderful cat, but he gets in the way of, I think. So I would have left mine out had I known that cats were.
This is a mistake, but she is called Shadow for a reason, because she lurks under stuff. Folks on the podcast, there is a large, very purry, very black cat who will not give me my hands right now. And that is why we are now suddenly talking about cats. Just to kind of keep you up on the visuals that you can't see.
I just love that. So let me say real quick about what you were saying about the familiarity, because I think this is super important. Again, I'll go back to what I was saying about the cars having four wheels. I'm a huge, the classic 3-act structure is my favorite. And it's my favorite because even if you don't study storytelling like you and I do, because we do it professionally, people have grown up. It's been developed over millennia of human experience, right? Is the development of the 3-act structure. And everyone knows it at a subconscious level. They know and when things don't happen, an inciting incident doesn't happen at a certain moment, the timing is off, then the story starts dragging, right? Like what's happening?
What's taking so long? Yeah.
What's taking so long? So it's the familiarity of that is you said it so beautifully, because it creates the circumstances for people to actually connect and actually stay for your story. Now, that doesn't mean, I want to make this super clear, there is a place for avant-garde storytelling, and
oh yeah, absolutely.
You do what you want, right? But if you want to connect with the broadest group of people, you have to meet them with the language that they're familiar with. right? And it's that.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, since we are now fully on storytelling craft, which is my favorite space to be in, you buy trust from your audience by hitting things that they predict, and then you can do something with that trust. You can subvert that trust once you have it. But audiences are pattern recognition, like our brains are pattern recognition machines. So audiences subconsciously are recognizing this is an inciting incident, this is the refusal of the call, this is that. They know the beats subconsciously because they have seen media again and again repeat them. So if you can buy their trust by hitting the beats, then you have their trust, and then you can surprise them and they will trust you that it's all going to be fine. They won't flip the table and leave when you do something they don't expect. It's you can do this in a very strategic way to tell incredibly powerful stories.
So true. That's so well said. And I think that bridges into what we were saying earlier, or that's the kind of rounding the circle of what we were saying earlier, where when you try to be too unique, when you're so obsessed with being unique that you decide that you're not going to work with that language, you end up creating something that no one can connect with. Ironically, your goal to create something unique for the sake of connecting with people, ironically, is destroyed by not working with their language, with the common language of storytelling. So it's actually freeing too, because a lot of people, it's like anything in life, right? Like you see the end product, you see where things are, like, you see an end product and you go, it must have come out that way, right? Like you see something like what we talked about, Full Metal Alchemist or Avatar, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you've ever read the art books and seen the story about that development, it came a very long way from what it was when it first started. I think it was going to be like a space adventure or something, and then it ended up being developed. Yeah, it went I think the original concept art had Aang as someone in the chat may remember what it was if they've read this book, but like as a
like an explorer on alien worlds. Yes, I do remember seeing the initial thing, some of the initial sketches from like the very initial stages.
That's right, and it didn't come out at the end by push button. It didn't come out of the creator's head as a completed masterpiece as Avatar, right? It took development. It took if you've never, I don't know if you've read Creativity Inc., the Pixar. It's a great book to read. It's several years old now, but it's great because it was kind of when Pixar was still in its heyday. But they talk in there about nurturing your ugly baby, right? They have a concept in there about nurturing your ugly baby. And it's like about you have to work on the idea. You can't just, and you have to be willing to toss things out too. You have to be willing to go through the process of development. And I think that's when you end up getting the masterpiece at the end, it's because you've gone through all that, the painstaking ideation, the painstaking editorial, the painstaking execution, to get all those things together. And the audience, it's like building like a grandfather clock, right? It's like they can see the work that went behind it. They can feel it because it's all connected. And so, I don't know. I feel that when you try to get caught up with being unique, unique is a byproduct of all that work. Yeah. It's not the goal, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I hard agree on that one. And I did not expect this conversation to go there. And what a fascinating thing we ended up talking about. No, don't apologize. I am always here for craft chat. Okay, like that is my happy place. It's talking about how we achieve what we want to achieve and what levers we can pull to make the things we want to make and make them, as to your point, as polished and as craft driven as we can. That's what makes something that you can be proud of, and that's what makes something that resonates with people.
Well, and the thing is, it may sound tropey or cliche to say this, but it really is easier to destroy something than to create. And it's also easier to be a critic than it is to create, right? Everyone's a critic. Everyone can sit there and say what they would have done and what, they sit there and bash. It's so funny when you see critics who then try to go create and they're not as good as what they were, what they were
ripping down,
trying to do, ripping down. It is a very different, and it's very vulnerable, right? It's a very vulnerable experience to create something, to put your story out there, and then to put it out there and then just not worry about what people are going to, well, not worry is not the right word, but to endure beyond either sticking to your vision or taking valuable feedback. Sometimes people will give you feedback like, you know what, this is probably right. I need to address this. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's time for our wrap up question, which is essentially, what can we learn from anime for storytelling in general? Not just for world building, but what can we learn from anime that sort of we can take into our respective media? What do you think is kind of the thing that it does so well that you wish everybody would take and use?
Vision. This is what I said from the beginning, is that having your vision. What is your vision? And sticking to it. And sticking with it is and you can take that into any. Okay, I need a second. I need to kind of bring this all together because I'm so glad you asked that question, because we try so hard to, in our attempt as creators to reach the widest audience possible, what ends up happening is we get worried about making everyone happy, right? And we said, well, if you try to make everyone happy, you make no one happy. And there was this great, if anyone, any anime fans out here, you might be aware of this creator. I know you're new, generally new to anime, but Hayao Miyazaki, for example,
was very
right.
Yes.
Very famous for saying I think he was doing an interview with Pete Docter from Pixar, and I'm paraphrasing this, okay? So I'm not quoting exactly, but Pete Docter asked him something like, who's one of the famous Pixar directors. He said, well, what do you do? How do you take into consideration audience feedback? And they do test, Hollywood style, everything is test screening and whatever. And Miyazaki's like, what? I just make what I like. It's basically like, I make what I want to make, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that's a fine line you have to he's earned that, right? He can do whatever he wants now, but there's a fine line between first sticking to your vision. I want to make this. This is the world I want to make. This is the story I want to tell. But also being open to, hey, there's possibilities that this could be refined or made better, or maybe it's convoluted. I can tell you from the people who work with me, can tell you that I am very good at that. I feel very good at like being able to take feedback, but when I want to stick with something, I stick with it. Ella, who's my right hand at Flux Destiny, our studio is called Hero Helix. She's the one who designed the mechanics for our TTRPG. And she was one who helped me take the universe and then turn it into a TTRPG. She has given me so much amazing feedback during the creation of the creation of the manga series. And there are certain things where I'm like, oh, you know what? She's right. I didn't think about that. And I will take those. But there's certain things that she'll tell you. And I will sometimes preface our conversations by saying, I'm just telling you before I show you this, I'm doing this, whether you like this or not, because I want this to happen.
But I think they go hand in hand. Like
they do, yeah.
If you're getting feedback, and you should, as a creator, be getting feedback. You should be getting feedback from people you trust, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Whether that's a writing teacher or trusted beta readers, or don't take feedback from anyone, but take feedback from people whose opinion you trust. But then if you have a strong vision, which bits of feedback will help you make your vision stronger and help you enact your vision, and which bits of feedback they're trying to make it into a book that it's not, or they're trying to make it into a manga that's not what you meant. That's not what you're trying to create. I think this is such a good point for all creatives, essentially, to know what you're trying to create, double down on it, and listen to people who will help you take steps to make it better.
I had many years ago, I was pitching so when Flux Destiny was in its early incarnation, very early, this is when I was still developing it. I went to, there's several like industry shows that happen every year. One of them is called MIPCOM. It's a big, a TV and film market that takes place in Europe every year, where all the studios go to do the thing. And part of it, they have part where you pitch your animation series ideas. And I was pitching at the time an early incarnation of Flux Destiny. And a major studio had liked the idea and wanted to have a meeting. And obviously for anyone who's a creator at the time, this is back, this was in 2008. It happened to happen right when the stock market crashed in 2008. But the funny thing was that at that time, that was before really online creators really had the clout that you could have now with it, or the success you could have. But they asked me they wanted to have a meeting. And for anyone who's a creator, that's a big deal, right? A major studio wants to have a conversation. I was so excited about it. And I remember I sat to have this meeting with the executive from there, and they wanted to go over the story. And I told them the concept of it, and we talked more about it. And then he wanted me to start making changes immediately. He's like, well, I want you to he goes, what we would want to do, the two leads are two best friends in this. Yeah. And he wanted me to change one of the leads into a female and then make it romantic.
And I said,
I said, but that completely, the whole story is built around, like, that completely changes the spine of the whole thing.
The whole story archetype.
Yeah, the whole story, exactly, it completely changes it. And that's where a moment, and I'm so glad at the time, and I was like, I remember being faced with this decision. It's like, is this something that I'm going to entertain, or is this something that I have to stick with? I said, this is my vision, and you keep going, knowing that you might be passing up something. And I'm so glad I did at the time, because the changes that they wanted to make would have completely come up with something. I'm like, why would I even do this? This is not why I'm creating this, for this reason. And all the years of development later turned out to something that I'm very proud of, because I put all the work and development into it, and I took feedback, and I learned the feedback process. I'm so glad you said we're bridging it a bit into how feedback and vision fit together, because when I was a kid, my own artistic development was very slow, because I was always afraid of showing people my work or getting criticism, or my mom wanted to sign me up for art classes. No, I don't want to, because I didn't want to get criticized. Right. And I was too worried. My little ego was too worried about being told, oh, you need to draw better, than believing my own story that I was such a good artist at 8 years old. Right. And I wish I could go back to that, early RC and shake some sense into him, because I love feedback now, especially, like you said, the right feedback, right? It doesn't mean you listen to everything on the internet, right? Because there's people who are going to say stupid things that don't matter. They're coming from, what's the intent? What is the intent? A lot of people just want to speak up and have an opinion, and speak from a place of just wanting to be heard. And it's very easy to sit there and criticize and talk about people's stuff. It's very hard to go build your own thing. But building that skill of balancing the two things, and being Libra, I'm very good at balancing. Balancing having a vision, but then taking feedback and sticking to your vision, but knowing when to apply the feedback, as you so well articulated earlier, I think is really important. So that is a takeaway from anime, and not that it's necessarily done perfectly in there, but you'll see. Look at the shows and series that do well, and I guarantee you that is one of the elements that made it so good. Is that so?
Wonderful, inspiring words, and thank you so much, RC. That's fantastic.
My pleasure.
Now, we've had several audience questions, but I do think this is the most pithy and timely. Will someone finally explain the end of Neon Evangelion to me? I offer it as tribute.
I think you need to look at there are certain shows and certain series that everyone's going to walk away with their own interpretation of what, and sometimes authors intend that. Sometimes authors don't even know what their work is. There's a feeling. I've done this before too, where you've done something and you derive the meaning later. It's something that comes out subconsciously. And sometimes things are left in such a way that you can walk away with different meanings based on your own experience. This ties to what we were saying about books earlier. So, well, what meaning do you walk away with it? How does it appeal to you? And I like that. So,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We were lucky enough in our first world building con to have Tracy Hickman give a keynote on the power of world building. And one of the things he said, which always got me, is, he's had 30 New York Times best-selling novels. And he says, people come to me and they tell me all about my book that I've written. And it sounds like a completely different book to me, because every time somebody reads my book, it is a brand new book for them. It is a different book than I wrote, because in the reading of it, it becomes something else. And I think that is incredibly powerful.
It really is. And I think that's why when people, the glut of entertainment that exists now, and, it's a marvel of technological achievement that we have streaming and all these things that we have now. The problem is that it's created these business models where there has to just be this glut of entertainment so that you can stay on a streaming subscription, for example.
It's an
right?
Overwhelm of content. Yeah.
Overwhelm. You cannot possibly want, but it's all mediocrity. It's content. It's just content, right? And it gets to the point where it's like, when you can create a story that people can connect with, and then first of all, it's hard enough getting people to even click and even take a risk on your show or any, talk about social, look at social posts, put on something on social and get someone to just connect with it there is difficult enough. So getting someone to take their very limited time and bandwidth, because they're being inundated with everything, to be connected with your story, and then take the second level down, which is now once they're connected, they start feeling it on a subconscious level in a way that they start deriving meanings that we were talking about. If you're able to do that, that's a great journey to take any audience member, reader with you on. And so I like that. I take that very seriously, because that's what got me to want to be in this line of work. We were talking before the show about when I was a kid. I'm 46 now, but when I was a kid in the 80s, there was a show on Nickelodeon called The Mysterious Cities of Gold, which was this amazing, like, epic, Japanese French co-production that was such a great show. Like, it was nothing like anything that was on TV at the time. And I kind of call it like a predecessor to Avatar, and same kind of like epic storytelling. And yes, it is the best intro. It does have the best intro song and everything on that. But like, you look at it and go, as a kid, it took me seriously. I watched it, and I was taken on this really epic journey that the stakes were very high, and there were very complicated matters politically involved in it, and all these things. And I was 8 years old, and I look at it and I walk away with it and I go, that inspired me. I said, and the feeling I used to get from watching that show as a kid. And it's just like, remember the feeling how it used to be when you'd walk out of a movie theater and you'd suddenly have a whole new life? Like, you'd watch a movie and you'd be like, my whole life, like that.
I'm altered as a person. Yeah.
Yes, that is what I feel like is so important. Something that I strive to do with the work I do. And I think any writer or any creator wants to have that connection with the audience that way. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, you can find more about RC's Brain Baby over on fluxdestiny.com/start. And of course, the fun is not over, because we are going on a raid. Our raid shout is a Light Up the Forge. So shout it out as we go over to the Rookery, where we are learning about doing your homework. And I think this is all about research for world building. So it should be an amazing time. Folks at the Rookery, really great people. So stick around to check that out. We, of course, are back next week with World Building Con for Game Masters. I have some of the biggest names in the industry coming to teach classes on setting design. I have the creator of Strad von Zarovich, Tracy Hickman, coming to talk about creating villains. I have the creator of the Warhammer Fantasy Universe talking about writing adventures. Folks, I have Amanda Hammond and Wolfgang Bauer, two of the biggest names in D&D, talking about making dungeons. I don't know that I could get better teachers for you. I don't know that they exist, but they will all be live on this channel next week. 14th and 15th, we have 4 sessions do come and join. There will be worksheets that you can print out and create along with as well. So you can walk away from this with your own setting, your own new adventure, your own villain, or you can just come and pick up the sort of advanced tips and ask questions and get involved. That's all happening next week. If you go to wanvil.com/game master, you can find all the details of that, and you can sign up so that you get emailed the worksheets in advance, so you can take a read through them. You can do your homework too, speaking of where we're going next. Folks, I hope to see some of you there. It's going to be an incredible learning experience full of inspiration. And of course, in the meantime, grab your hammer and go world build. Bye, everyone.